We're going to start by doing the great Democrat implosion of 2025. It's fun to watch this happen, isn't it? When things sort of shake out of control and, the wheels start coming off the train and it looks like the whole thing might just derail in front of your eyes. No, I'm not talking about a Pete Buttigieg era actual train. I'm talking about what we're seeing now in the Democratic Party. This sort of implosion that's going on, and it is bizarre to watch. Let me give you just one example of this. Chuck Schumer. The guy's been around forever. He's been a liberal forever. He votes left on every single thing. He's the Senate leader. The left is very upset with him for one reason, because he apparently, at the last minute, after talking a big game about how he could stop the Republican continuing resolution, continuing spending, by the way, in a way that doesn't make many conservatives happy, he then, of course, had to fold and vote for it anyway, so there wasn't a government shutdown that he got blamed for. He had a big book coming out, and he was going to go a big tour to promote that book, and maybe not so much anymore. Schumer now postponing his book tour due to security concerns amid anger from Democrats over government funding fight. Interesting. Now, I will say funding can be a big issue. It's, the Tea Parties were part of that righteous anger was because of funding issues. I don't typically see the left really motivated by such things. They just want more spending. What we basically did was lock in massive levels of spending for the next, 6-7 months. This isn't like a conservative proposal by any means, but some of the people on the left were like, you should stop it. You should make conservatives have to deal with all the shutdown stuff. Maybe they'll get blamed for it. That was sort of the far left position. I will say there might be something else at play. The Democratic leader was scheduled to appear in Baltimore, Washington, D.C., New York City, Philly, Los Angeles, and San Francisco to discuss his new book, Anti-Semitism in America, A Warning. Due to security concerns, Schumer's book events are being rescheduled, said representatives for Schumer. Now, was it the funding? I mean, probably. At some level, it was the funding. There certainly were some people upset with that decision. That there is some real anger on the left. Would that mean that he would be unsafe at his book signings? Or might I just propose there's a giant wing of the Democratic Party that seemed to be awfully aligned with Hamas and might be using a funding dispute as an excuse to go protest, quote unquote, protest a book about anti-Semitism. Just going to throw that out there. I think maybe a little bit of both columns apply in this particular instance. But I mean, here's the Democratic leader who, look, let's be honest about it. And this has happened on the right, too. There have been examples of this on the right, where in reality, the people at the top in leadership can't really do much of anything, right? They can't really do much of anything. They don't have big enough majorities, or they're in the minority. Really, Chuck Schumer couldn't do much of anything here. There wasn't much he could do. He could throw the country into a government shutdown, which, again, doesn't really benefit them. I think if that happened, the person making the decisions as to who is an essential employee is the same guy running Doge. So, you might be sitting back and saying, I don't know if I'm a Democrat. I don't know if I want them making those decisions. And in reality, there's not much he could do there. They're just pissed off because they're losing and they're flailing around and they're in the middle of an implosion. And that is what we are here to talk about. Now, this is also leading to a bunch of threats of primaries. Democrats setting themselves up for a year of primaries in 2026. On the heels of his support of the funding bill, Schumer has been hit with the most backlash within hours of his announcement that he would support an advancing GOP-backed bill, which needed 60 votes to clear procedural hurdles. Progressives were encouraging AOC to take on Schumer when he's up for re-election in 2028. You think that's going to happen? Think AOC is going to step in for that battle? My guess would be yes. I think she will. CNN poll Sunday firmly backed the sentiment against the Democrats. The survey showed that the Democratic Party's favorability is at 29%, a record low in CNN polling dating back to 1992. The poll shows a significant drop of 20 points since January 2021, when Trump left office following his first term. That's the success of the Joe Biden administration. That's the Biden era in a nutshell right there. Which, again, probably pretty good for conservatives, even though we had to pay a high price with the country being in so much trouble. But when you talk about just political benefit, really, he sunk the party to a level that wasn't possible by most politicians. He really did something pretty special there, if you want to look at it that way. Now we're having a new wave of Democrats who are coming up. Obviously, AOC's stepping up. We're also getting Jasmine Crockett. Yes, Crockett, possibly supporting an AOC candidacy over Schumer. She doesn't really say she would do that. That's sort of the way it was reported. Listen to her wording here. I mean, I think we all know what she would do if this situation presented itself, but her response wasn't quite that clear.
You're close with Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez of New York. Some of your fellow House Democrats say, and not just progressives, by the way, we've heard that moderates have said this too, that they're ready to support her to challenge Chuck Schumer in a Democratic primary. Would you get behind that?
That's 4 years from now. If you were asking me at least in 2 years, then I would have an absolute answer. But I can tell you that there are a lot of people that are watching his leadership in this moment. This is the moment. We don't even know what elections will look like in 4 years, if we will have elections. And so I definitely think that younger, fresher leadership may be something that many of us, not just depending on what part of the spectrum you're on, but many Americans may be looking for, especially in the state of New York.
Who knows? Maybe we won't even have elections. By the way, stop those darn conservatives from fear-mongering all the time. But we might not even have elections in 2028, 2026. So, I mean, look, the answer to her question there, of course, his question there is obviously yes, she would support AOC. If this came down to what we were looking at. There's almost no doubt about that. And that is sort of that's where the energy of the party is right now, right? That's where the energy of the Democratic Party is. It's against people like Schumer, and the whole sort of structure is shaking apart. Now, AOC does lead poll of Democrats on which leader best reflects the party's core values. Now, I wouldn't take that much into this poll. I will tell you that I believe this is true. If you think about what really is the value of the Democratic Party, it's largely two things: communism and stupidity. And there's nobody that exemplifies those two things together than AOC. She's perfect. Literally a perfect. Like if you went into a lab and you took half of the test tube and you filled it with stupidity and half of it with communism, you'd come out with AOC. That's basically how perfect she is. She fits perfectly and should be the face of the Democratic Party. Now, when you look at the details of the poll, it's not quite as clear as I believe it is. The survey released Sunday, Democrats and Democratic-leaning independents were asked to name the one person, when thinking about Democratic leaders today, who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party. 10% said AOC, 9% said Kamala Harris, 9% said Kamala Harris, 8% said Bernie Sanders, and 6% said Hakeem Jeffries. Now, really, I mean, Sanders and AOC are basically the same there. Jasmine Crockett even got some percentages. She got 4%. Chuck Schumer, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi, Alyssa Slotkin, got 2% as well. It tells you something about Gavin Newsom's. I mean, people love to promote Gavin Newsom like he's this big figure that connects with everybody. No, he really doesn't. I don't see it. I don't think there's any organic interest in Gavin Newsom as an actual candidate. I think there is organic interest in AOC as an actual candidate. But really, Gavin Newsom is more of a media creation than anything else, though you never know. Now, we have all that going on. Schumer is on the outs, the rise of AOC, this battle back and forth as to who's going to control the party, all the criticism coming from the progressive wing and the squad types, that's going on. And then you have AOC feuding with Kyrsten Sinema, the former Democratic senator. She ripping Senate Democrats for apparent flip-flopping on the filibuster now that they need it. Now, this is a little hard to follow, so let me try to present this to you the way that actually happened. First, The Hill wrote a story about AOC's comments on Chuck Schumer, saying that she was pissed off, basically, that he didn't utilize the filibuster to stop the bill that was the funding bill that she's so mad about. Kyrsten Sinema, who famously didn't want to get rid of the filibuster, comes back and says, change of heart on the filibuster, I see, and posts an old tweet of AOC when she said, we could protect Roe tomorrow, but Sinema refuses to act on the filibuster. Now, AOC came back with a just gibberish, nonsensical response. She said, still no. In fact, the same Dems who argue to keep the filibuster for when we need it do not, in fact, use it when we need it. It's only used to block Dem policies. Yeah, no Republican policies have ever been filibustered. I mean, at some point you wonder, is there a war going on between the two brain cells? So they're totally preoccupied and can't come up with one actual thought? Is that what's going on inside of AOC's head? Something's happening in there, because I assume she's got a couple of brain cells, but they don't seem to be on the job. Have they been impeached? Did she impeach her own brain cells? I'm concerned. Cinema, by the way, and look, as much as I like to tell you that I would be right on everything all the time, Cinema, I thought was going to be really bad as a senator. I thought she was going to be terrible. Her past indicated, I think quite clearly, she would be very far left. You know, she had some moments where she showed she was in the center. I really thought those were the insincere parts of her. When she wanted to get elected, all of a sudden she moved to the center. I will say, as a senator, she was better than I expected. Not good, not great, better than I expected, which is saying something, I suppose, because she did actually hold the line on stuff like that. You could say the same stuff about Fetterman. I mean, Fetterman seems like this good Democratic senator because he's occasionally sane on like 2 issues. But that's way more than you're getting. People like Sinema are they're just ejected out of the party. They're like poor Goose hitting his head on the top of the Top Gun shield there and just plummeting to the ocean. It's sad. But that is the real truth about the Democrat Party. You can't be Sinema and really be in there. I have seen mostly positive stuff about John Fetterman because, I'm on the conservative side, and I see when he says sane things about, let's say, Israel, people are on the right are like, oh, wow, somebody on the Democratic side saying something smart for once. That being said, the left hates him now. And again, this is the same type of thing where he has a very far left background. He's voted almost entirely left wing. His voting record, when you look at his voting record, it would make you cringe as a conservative. But just the fact that he goes on TV and occasionally says something sane is enough to cross the hurdle and clear the hurdle of sanity when it comes to Democrats these days. We also have, of course, all the woke stuff still going on. We had an example of this on Bill Maher the other day. Bill Maher shutting down Don Lemon's racist comments about black Trump supporters. I want to play this for you. Now, Don Lemon's not a Democratic politician, though, of course, a very left-leaning news guy and trying to, make a name for himself. But he does sort of illustrate the actual belief of most of the left, most Democrats, when they look at black Republicans. They look at them with this disdain. You're not even real. You remember Joe Biden saying, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. That is, let me give you that segment now out of the mouth, essentially, of Don Lemon.
The same thing that when I see, not all black Republicans, but I see a black MAGA person who is carrying Donald Trump's water and they know that he's lying, it is the shortest line to the front. Because if you're black and you're whatever, you're just in line with a bunch of other Democrats that are doing the same thing that you're doing. But if you become a black MAGA person, it's like, whoa, let's book this person. Let's put him on television.
So you don't think you can be a sincere black MAGA person?
No, I just said, I don't think that, I just said, I think there can be sincere Republicans.
But you can't be a sincere black Republican?
I don't think that you can be a rational MAGA, be black and be a rational MAGA person. I think you can be black and be a Republican.
I think they would find that very insulting.
Well, I mean, the truth is often insulting.
See, you can't have those views if you're black. I mean, that is essentially, once again, if you don't vote for Joe Biden, you ain't black. Now, he has a little bit of a disclaimer that you could be a Republican but not a MAGA person. Okay, that's fine. I guess he has some little out there. But at the end of the day, that's their opinion, right? It is very, very insulting to African Americans who have their own rational beliefs. They have their own beliefs. I love the line, by the way, and this is such a fascinating thing because for years and years and years and years, we've been told that Republicans hate black people because they look different or something, right? There's this, we hate, black people because they're different than us and everything else because we're so deeply, deeply, deeply racist. And yet, what Don Lemon says is, when you are a black MAGA person, it's the fastest way to the front of the line, meaning that you'll be embraced by conservatives, by MAGA people. Essentially, if you have similar worldview, that it doesn't really matter if you have black skin or brown skin or white skin or whatever skin. That's a fascinating admission because, if anything, it shows a preference. And I think this is, quite obviously true, right? Like you have a situation where, because there's a lower percentage of African Americans who are voting for Republican policies, Republicans often will embrace African Americans, even if they're kind of new on the scene. You do maybe get a little bit of a promotional interest from a lot of conservative media because of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's totally fine. It's interesting, of course, to hear from all different perspectives. But like a racist party, a hardcore racist wouldn't want black people in their group because they didn't like black people. This doesn't make any sense. This is Don Lemon in a nutshell. I guess I did not breaking news with that particular thing. The direction is really interesting because this is sort of a war. It's a factional war on the left. And they're trying to figure out which way to go with this because they realize what they've done so far obviously is not working. They're having massive, massive trouble. So where do you go? What do you do next? There's an article in The Atlantic by Derek Thompson. This is actually an excerpt from his book, I believe. The Political Fight of the Century. For the first time in decades, America has a chance to define its next political order. He says, Trump offers fear, retribution, and scarcity. Liberals can stand for abundance. I believe the name of the book is Abundance. Now, Derek Thompson is a person on the left, but somebody who writes pretty interesting stuff and has interesting perspective. He highlights this, and I will say the concept of his book is a little frightening to me, honestly, as a conservative, because of some of the changes on the right that I've seen. He's arguing for abundance, essentially, like to leave behind things like all these. He doesn't exactly say this, but like if you think about like a restrictive environmental policy that makes it so business can't occur, this sort of degrowth fetish that a lot of people on the left has. His point is like, hey, let's go the opposite direction. Let's go for abundance. Let's make people's lives better. Let's bring things in. We can do that with liberal policies. And like you might say, well, that's not consistent with liberalism. I would agree largely, though. Parts of it, like he's saying, like, oh, well, healthcare for everybody is abundance, right? We don't have scarcity of healthcare. So there's some of the stuff you would agree with, some of it you wouldn't. That's kind of a long setup. Maybe we'll have him on and talk to him about the book. But I want to give this quote because this is really fundamental about where we are right now. This is what he says in criticism of Democrats and their current approach. If Democrats want to understand why they're failing to achieve their goals in the places they control, they need to concede that the faulty party also lives in the mirror. Look at California. Its most populous cities are run by Democrats. Every statewide elected official in California is a Democrat. Liberals should be able to say, vote for Democrats and we'll turn America into California. Instead, with the state's infamously high cost of living and stark homelessness crisis, it is conservatives who can say, vote for Democrats and they'll turn America into California. Liberal governance should be an advertisement for itself, not for its opposition. And that, of course, is obviously true. No politician could run on the left and say, gosh, we've got control of California. We will make America into California. That would be a losing message from any Democrat and really any left-wing state. On the other side, Republicans do say stuff like this all the time. We often say stuff like, hey, put us in power, we'll make America just like Florida. Hey, put us in power, we'll make America just like Texas. That's something we actually do say. We're proud of the results that we are achieving in many areas in the country, where the left has to basically run from them and give you this sort of theoretical version of what could happen if you trust them, even though you probably shouldn't. But don't worry about that, vote for me, or at least give us a bunch of money. That's not a winning message, and I think it's clear at this point that is not a winning message. They're flailing to try to figure out what is a winning message. Before we go, I want to highlight one more time AOC and Jasmine Crockett, because they are a couple of my faves. I got to say. When you're thinking of like, who's your favorite Democrat? And I don't mean like favorite policy Democrat. You might say, well, John Fetterman is good on a couple of things. No. I'm talking about who are the people you love seeing in the media? Who are the people that you absolutely love when they comment on an important issue, because you know they're going to give you the absolute dumbest version of it. And the most fun thing to do is to fight with an AOC or a Jasmine Crockett, because you know whatever they say is going to be dumb, and you're going to be able to win that battle. It's just a lot of fun. So I was thinking about coming up with a list of the top 5 Democrats that I love. I'd have to put AOC on that list. I'd have to put Jasmine Crockett on that list. I'd have to put Mazie Hirono on that list, because she just blurts out some of the strangest things and doesn't seem to ever know what she's talking about. Who are the Democrats that you would put on that list? I mean, Ilhan Omar, maybe you'd put on that list. Rashida Tlaib, maybe you'd put on that list. I don't know if you want to go to, Joe Biden's already gone. Drop them in the comments below. If you're on YouTube, drop it in the comments below. It is, just give me the Democrats you'd nominate for that top 5 list. I want to go through some of these names maybe a day this week or next week and come up with like a top 5 that we can kind of have and then only replace when it's absolutely necessary. So drop those comments below wherever you are watching, and we'll get to that in the coming days,